Good morning, Sal.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay. I survived grandchild care over the weekend. 1 day holiday.
There you go.
Really,
How
three kids under six. It's like,
Sal, that's no
whoa.
joke. That's no joke.
No, really, when you're 40 or 35 or maybe even 50. But geez. Yeah, no,
It
it's
was
fun.
hard. Yeah, it was hard when I was 40 something. Yeah. Wow, that's a lot. What do you get? What do you do?
Well, there's a lot of bike riding and scootering outside if it's nice, and it kind of was. A lot of painting and drawing, and we play
Any direction?
Sorry. The kids
Yeah.
are really into Sorry. We play that
Oh,
all the
that's a
time.
fun one.
And of course, the 18 or 19-month-old, she's a special case. So she wants to be engaged and everything now, but can't quite.
Right.
I
Right.
have a little practice putting mat that for
Oh, there
golf.
you go.
Kids love it. So they roll it out, they play for like 10 minutes, they forget about it, they come back 2 hours later and play again.
Yeah.
It's just the house is a disaster area, though. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
they take every toy they have is out, books and balls and all, it's just, and they
And
and they
is it
don't.
your house? Is it your house,
Yeah, yeah,
Sal, or is it?
they love coming to our house because it's a
Yeah.
different
Hmm.
place.
So you have to
Yeah.
clean up.
They help a little bit, particularly the little one. She loves putting things in, back in place. Yeah. So,
That's great. Hey,
but
Kelly.
yeah. Hi, Kelly.
Get a couple folks joining us a little bit late, and Stephanie is jumping on right now. I did
Oh, okay.
not attach the RFP document to the agenda yet. I'll make sure that it does get attached following this meeting, and I'll try to. I know we only have a few more of these left, but I'll try to get them attached before the meeting. It's just hard to do sometimes when things are flying around.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but I'll make sure it's at least there for the record.
So I've made some comments and stuff just locally on the version that I have. I thought I would just follow it as I mean, this, this meeting could go quickly or it could, bog down. It just depends I didn't see a whole lot to fuss with.
I I I do have like some thoughts, but they're not, I did not get into wordsmithing at this point. It
Yeah.
feels like it's a
Yeah.
draft that you folks are going to continue to work on, but
Yeah.
I just have some kind of thoughts or potential additions or questions, but
Well, as Kelly knows, I can't help myself with language suggestions, but there's just a few, and
You
all.
know what? I appreciate that, and I will take any comments and incorporate it in. And yes, this is a draft, so there's still time to get,
Yeah.
sort of whether it's the fine tuning with the wordsmithing or, maybe even significant wordsmithing, whatever. And then, if there are additions to this that we'd like to get in there, this is
Yeah.
more to kind of, as a starting point to really, work through. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So do we know who's arriving late? I haven't heard
So
anything.
Adrian is just a few minutes behind schedule, so she should be arriving
Okay.
shortly.
Okay.
Um,
Well, we'll wait for everybody.
sounds good.
On another matter, Kelly, did you get my note this morning about
I
the better
did, yep.
connections? Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Actually, I was gonna so I've got to get it through to staff to see what we have for capacity. I would like to do it.
Yeah.
And then I just need to follow up. I did see that their contacts, actually one of the contacts in there I know. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, that'll make that at least a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, we'll look into it and try to get
Okay.
it done. I have to say, we are just sort of bumping up against, there are a lot of competing priorities right now.
Yeah.
It feels like everything all at once,
Well,
so
Complete Streets has some people that will help if they can, I
Okay,
think.
yeah.
So,
Well, and
I
I
mean,
think
and
Corey,
Holly and Hanif are on on the case. I mean, they know about it.
yeah. Um, this is Stephanie. I'm gonna make sure she can get on.
Oh, okay, yeah.
All right. I'm not the only one late.
Whew! It's these 8 o'clock meetings that are just a killer. But don't worry, people are just popping on. No
I
big
know.
deal.
Abby was slow this morning. We watched the boys' game against Harwood last night. It was
What they do?
heartbreaking.
2-0, right?
2-0.
Yeah.
It was so sad. Montpelier worked so hard. There was an error in the goal. It slipped out of his hand. It was just you just feel it for those kids who like,
Yeah.
and Harwood and Montpelier are always like rivals. So like the whole
Oh,
Harwood
look, I'm
squad
sorry,
there.
the gang's all here.
So anyway, it was wild, but we're tired this morning.
Good morning, everybody. I call the meeting to order. And hearing no changes to the agenda, we'll accept the agenda. Public comment, I see no member, well, I see Pellin. I suppose Pellin is considered public. Hi, Pellin. Are there any members of the public here to comment? Not that I see. Let's move on to item 4, RFP development.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry, I was on the Teams link. I don't know. I got confused. Well, yeah, so I thought we should just dive in if we could. I can share the doc and maybe we just do some live edits as we go, if that works for everybody. Okay, great. Just pull up my window here. So, yeah, again, appreciate your patience as we try to, do this in real time, but, excuse Boombox. She's got might of her own. So
Stephanie, can I just ask a quick question of like,
Yeah.
as we go through this document, like where can we be most helpful in terms of like the granularity that we get into? Do you want like wordsmithing or do you want reactions to the ideas, or like I have kind of higher level questions?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious what you're looking
Let's do
for.
that. Yeah, that's a good point, Ben. Thanks. I think, granularity, wordsmithing, typos, edits, if you have a red line already and can email that to me, that would be easiest, I think, because we don't need to spend our time if it's not substantive or qualitative or qualitative. I think that would be the easiest way. So yeah, I think high level questions are good. We could start just off the bat with those questions if they're not in kind of a structured format. But yeah, the most helpful is going to be two things. One is making sure the message is consistent with what your direction is. And number two is effectiveness, really, like thinking about the end user and who you want. If you have somebody in mind, like, oh, it'd be so great if we could land something like this. How do we work backwards in a kind of design thinking way to see if we can get to that outcome of how do we attract that person? Now, some of this were the structure wise, I'm open to suggestion, but there are kind of, tried and true structures with that, like that format. It's not that it couldn't be changed if needed. Okay. So do you have some like kind of, if you want to go broad?
I mean, I do. I
let's
can
just do that.
say everything I want in like 30 seconds.
Great.
Like, I don't have any issue with the structure. It looks like a good draft to me. Really, to me, it's the second part of what you just said about like, are we making the case? And I'm just thinking there's some attributes to this site that aren't mentioned. For example, like, I think it's a real great selling point for a housing community, like that we have a childcare center right on site that's active and growing, right? Or
Yep.
that they're going to build a pump track, the mountain bike folks want to build a pump track up in the upper right-hand corner. Just some, I think that there's some like unique amenities to the site that could really be highlighted more, especially in the sense of like, when we've talked about the idea of like making it a recreational friendly community or neighborhood, that just, I think just highlighting some of the activity that's already happening up there organically that would, amplify, I think, what we're trying to do here. And then the only other thing that I know, the other thing was just in the first or second sentence, the purposes of housing and recreation. I think it's also important to acknowledge that, the city also, conservation was also a goal that was included in the purchase. And then the only kind of question I have is around the $1 price tag, which, makes sense to me, but I also think we should have clarity around this, that like, are we only talking, I mean, I guess I'm unclear on like ownership of the 133 acres, right? And are we selling off buildable areas, all of the buildable areas, part of them? Like, you know what I mean? Just looking for clarity around that, because I'm assuming that the city is I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, but that the city is going to maintain ownership over, the parcels that aren't going to be developed, that are going to be used for recreation.
Yeah, I have similar questions about that, and actually the whole western half of the property, which is not mapped at all for anything except conservation, and the question, Stephanie, that I asked about the HUD requirement, affordability requirements, and how that applies to the
Yeah.
whole parcel or separate parcels, phase construction, or so.
Yeah, let me, okay, so let me I'm gonna kind of put some.
Yeah, sorry, just drop all of that.
Yeah, let me just, my hand is not as fast as all your brains, hold on. Okay, so let me start off with, thank you for reminding me of the conservation. Number 2, I think the amenity aspect, not just amenities, but like, again, the activity, the momentum, is there. And I think that is also, I think we could add, I wonder how we could add something maybe, and I was scrolling is kind of maybe to focus it here in the beginning of the partnership opportunity, talk about what's already been going on with the momentum at the site. So talk about the daycare center, talk about the pump track, talk about the recreation, because that is kind of a silent piece here. Like, there's already like half of the buildable area, really, outside of the conservation areas, half has been devoted to a future recreation expansion. And we don't know the details of what the city wants to do with that yet, but the idea that there's going to be a concerted programming investment by the city there is also a huge amenity. So I think that's also worth noting. So let's add that.
I defer to you, but maybe in the background component of it, right? That
Maybe in
this is
background,
just
sure.
like, that this is part of the context of this RFP process, is that
Sure.
we've got
Yeah.
this really dynamic ecosystem of recreation happening there.
Yeah, I think in the background sounds good. And then the partnership part, talking about the openness of the city to, I mean, maybe somebody has a really cool rec combined already, like somehow incorporating the rec piece into their development plan. So just being open to the fact that like there could be good collaboration opportunities there.
We could,
Yeah, I like that idea.
I put in the chat box, Montpelier Live has a whole website about outdoor adventure for branding the city of Montpelier. It seems like
Oh, yeah, nice.
identifying pre-existing Like, we don't have to do more work. We have this stuff. We just have to point to it. And that kind of prompts the responses to think,
Yeah.
oh, this being included means that this is important to them. And this kind of gets to what Adrian was mentioning a couple of meetings ago about the values, that there are things available on Montpelier Live, but other websites, I'm sure, that would help frame the kind of community conservation and outdoor activities that we've talked about and other issues.
I love that. And also the idea of kind of selling Montpelier, not just selling, just elevating Montpelier
Yeah.
for people who don't know the community. You know, if we're looking at people outside of the community, we want to make sure we're being clear about you know, what Montpelier is all about. So
It probably ought to also include some reference to the city's intention to someday build an indoor recreation facility
Right.
On the property.
Yep.
Adrian, I don't know if you know this from the Child Care Task Force, but is Turtle Island actually the largest childcare operator in Central Vermont?
I think so. I think they have 75 seats, and of course, Palin just hopped off. I'm pretty sure it is the largest, or might be the second largest, but it is big.
Yeah, I mean, just that alone, right? That if it is in fact the largest or second largest childcare provider in Central Vermont, I feel like that's a value to note.
Yeah, we could probably chase. I mean, we could chase that down, right? In time to include it. Yeah.
Maybe just saying one of Central Vermont's most important.
Great.
Sure.
You don't have to put a number or rank it.
Let's
Thank you, Matt.
make less work for ourselves. The other idea I thought of, and I didn't include yet, but is it worth, and I mean, I know it's in the action plan, but would it be worth also showing the history of public engagement here, you know, and citing, you know, the amount of engagement by the community that was interested in this, that supported this, that, you know, had this kind of going toward it. So I think it's only an appendix. I think it's an attachment, but maybe specifically pulling out the public engagement section from the action plan that would summarize 22 to 23. And if there's any further exhibits that the city could gather to point to since 23, what's been happening. So just to show, again, to show the city bought this in 22, right? 22. Yeah. And
Yeah.
you know, that's a long time to be sitting on a piece of property. So let's explain to the people who haven't been living this and breathing this for 4 years by the time this gets going, you know, what's been happening, and that it hasn't been just bogged down in something ugly, you know, that it's something good.
I will jump in. I think that property is very well utilized. And I think we need to highlight that. It's, if you go up there 7 days a week, people are using it for soccer, for recreation, they're walking, they're biking, they're cross-country skiing. Like, I will say it's one of the most, it's my favorite property in Montpelier. And I think we need to highlight that it is being used.
Right.
And people are up there. And I think now with the childcare, so I want to paint the picture that it's not, I don't want to tell the story that we bought this in 2022 and it's just this, you know, I'm thinking of someone outside of Vermont, right? So painting the story of, we bought this in 2022. It's a valuable flood-resistant property in Montpelier that's utilized 7 days a week by our community for recreation, for childcare. It is a very important piece of property in our community that ties to that outdoor adventure, resilience, really being, you know, one of the most valuable pieces of property in our city, and you know, kind of telling that story of it is being utilized. Like, I don't want people to think it's just this blah.
It's not an albatross. Yeah. Yeah.
Not a ball and chain. Yeah. Matt, go ahead.
Is there any value in framing the city's interest in developing this property at this point as kind of a renaissance after the flood and kind of rethinking the direction of the city? I mean, could we frame the flood as a launching point for rethinking how we want this to work? Would that be valuable?
Since it was bought pre-flood and
a lot has happened,
and a lot of work was done pre-flood, and this is still consistent with that.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that gains us is all. I don't know that it's bad. I think the important piece in the messaging is truthfully, what I'm a little worried about is that anybody who knows Vermont and knows development in Vermont understands the inherent risk of appeals and the inherent risk of opposition to projects. And that's something that's going to that could deter people. If they have a choice to build in, Pennsylvania or here or New Hampshire or here, there might be reasons why they choose somewhere else. And so what I'd like to do is, I like the idea, Matt, of the spin of post-flood, because what it does is, again, this is our last like super high capacity flood resilience, flood proof site, out of floodplain site in all of Montpelier, but like even, a lot of central Vermont, because it's zoned right, it's in it's connected with other, sites for this purpose. So making that the argument that it has support for development, because it's flood resilient could be the spin. But
well, and it's not a stretch to suggest that the whole process of developing it was delayed significantly by the flood.
True. Yeah. So the other piece that I wanted to respond to was the whole property versus the some parts and such. We've kind of buried the lead here about buildable areas only. So, what I added was this note, like, per the attached plan, if we were to attach the most recent concept from the spring, I mean, we will attach the recent concept from the spring and point to it and say, which buildable area are you interested in? We're not going to create the lot lines at this stage. We're not asking them to show us the lot lines, but RFP status, when we get to RFP point, yes, we are. How much of this property do you need and want, assuming what they need for lot coverage purposes and so on. And that can be a discussion. It doesn't have to be a proposal. We're partners here. It's not a application.
So I think this is the one, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I can't. Yeah. So it's the Country Club Road Site Master Plan. That's what the current title on the version that I have is.
Yep.
May 2025.
And we'll cite that and date it and attach it. And I think the point being, tell us which buildable areas you're interested in. And I just think we need to, the $1 is just taking land cost out of the equation for them.
I totally get that.
And and if they propose something that covers all the buildable areas, great. If they only do one, and then that project goes forward, we agree it's a great project, we get it done in the next 2 years, and then after that, you want to go out with another RFP, and you don't want to give away the land for $1, that's okay. It's your prerogative. Okay. But at this stage, to get the ball rolling, let's do no land cost. And if they do multiple phases and they want to do all of it, I mean, so be it. Like right now, that's the goal. If that doesn't sit well when they come back to us, we can talk about it.
So you're saying really no land costs with no specification of how much land we're actually talking about until we get responses. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
And, not the conservation areas, not the rec area. So we're not talking about 133. We're talking a lot less. And then the question you had, getting the question you had, Sal, and maybe Matt can speak to this, or Kelly, about the DR money, and the amount of required low to moderate income housing. So there's a percentage that needs to be constructed by a certain timeline if we're selected for DR money. So there's a lot of ifs here. And so we're kind of against it, still trying to keep the funnel open, but we're going for this money. We only want applications and project ideas that have the component that would be required. Matt, do you want to speak to that a little bit?
So I'm not an expert on this. I can learn more and brief you maybe tomorrow with more context, but essentially because we've applied for a federal grant, which is through the Northern Borders Regional Commission of $3 million. And then we're also applying for DR money, though that's state money. It's not, it's federal money, but it goes through the state. So it's actually considered in the Northern Borders grant, it's considered state funds. But both those grants have strict requirements over the numbers of affordable housing units, and those numbers can be pretty high.
Matt, can I just stop just for
Yeah.
1 second? I just want to, I am not an expert on it either, but I have done some work with these folks, and their Northern Borders Regional Commission isn't related to, that doesn't have a affordability component related to housing. It's really specifically about the infrastructure. There are different match components based upon the median household income of the community, but it's not tied to housing. It's really the DR money that has affordability requirements. I think it's 70% low to moderate income, but that's within the entire portfolio of state projects through the DR. So in order for us to be really competitive for that money, we would need to have, that 70% or close. But it doesn't exactly have to be 70%, but they really have different requirements, the Northern Borders and the CBDG DR. And it's really the CBDG DR that is focused on that 70% low to moderate income. And I believe, I don't know, I mean, again, we need to, maybe Matt, you can double check all this, but I believe it's like we have to build within 6 years, or not we, the project needs to be completed within 6
think it's
years and
6
have that
years, yeah.
affordability component in it.
Adrian, you had a comment?
Yeah, just a quick question, sort of kind of unrelated, but related. I was thinking about the grants, and Stephanie, I was looking at your timeline last night, and I know we'll get there, but maybe we can just take a note of this so I don't want to forget it. But
Yeah.
It looks like you moved the timeline out to January, because I think we were originally working towards December 18th. So I just wanted to find out why that changed. We don't have to answer that now, but
Yeah, no, that's
just-
okay. We can, because yeah, I made a note in the cover about what we were, and in the cover email that I adjusted it based on the feedback, which was we wanted to give, I can't remember exactly, and I'm not doing a compare and contrast, so I don't remember how they moved exactly, but I know we said we wanted to give developers a long period of time, like a longer period of time, because if they're due, if we send the RFP mid-December, wanting to give them with the holidays a bit of overlap, a little bit of extra buffer into January. Looking at February.
So we're not
Oh.
going towards that. So the December 18th deadline is no longer, I'm
Yeah.
just confused.
No,
That
it
was
is,
actually-
it's short list. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
and I believe that the December 18th deadline was for the CBDGDR round 2 applications, but I believe they've since pulled that off the website.
Oh,
If I,
Okay.
if I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
just jump in.
Sorry, I
real
just want to make sure
Go ahead.
I'm like understanding it, because I was confused by the timeline change. That's all.
quick.
Go ahead, Kelly.
There's a couple things. So in terms of the timeline for the DR grant, we have not got confirmation yet. I mean, we're still working sort of on the rough timeline that we had in the RFP, but it does seem like there might be an extension for application. We don't know that yet. So, I mean, I think we're still kind of trying to, tee everything up so that then we're ready and can sort of identify what that might look like. In terms of the number of units, sort of the DR grant is structured in a way that it's global in nature, as we've been talking about. We can get you more of the specifics. Mike will be on the call tomorrow as well, so he should be able to brief a little bit. But sort of the gist of it is, and this is just based on an email from yesterday from Mike, with the 70% requirement, it's for the entire 68 million in federal funds. And so that would be around 30 units. It costs about 500,000 4 units ballpark. And so really, if it's 70%, of the, it depends on how many units we develop. It's long and short of it. Like, it depends on what we're looking at here, for this project. And so I think, we probably would end up around that 30 unit mark for LMI. But I want to make sure that we kind of get a better understanding of what that is specifically. We do have a meeting on calendar on Friday with Doug Farnham and Pat Moulton to kind of talk a little bit more about DR funding. We do need to also make sure that we're following up with the ACCD folks. So we will make sure that we have answers for you. Right now it's more of like a frame of reference. It's not like sort of a specific. And I want to make sure we can kind of get that in alignment so that then there's more meat on the bones there.
Well, you know, it affects what we eventually do. I don't know how much it affects the RFQ, but everything that I have heard, including, I haven't talked directly to Nate Formulari, but I've talked with people who have, and it may be not as simple as you know, a percentage of the entire 68 million. It may be that I mean, the last word that I heard was that any infrastructure that is constructed using HUD funds, it will require indefinitely into the future. So if we phase the project and we build infrastructure from the circle to the building using HUD funds, everything we build that connects to that infrastructure in total has to have 70%. That seems insane to me, but it certainly doesn't work if, you know, for TIF, for anybody, if that's the case. I don't think so. I'm completely confused about what it is, but I think we really need to nail it down at some point, and somebody must know the answer somewhere.
Yeah, no, we can definitely nail it down. I think it's a good question in terms of, you know, what we're dealing with this for this project. I mean, I sort of in a blue sky scenario, it would be the first project in, you know,
Yeah.
and so like the first, you know, development would be it.
Ideally, yeah.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, how do you follow that? What if we end up connecting water over to Sabin's pasture? Over
it is. It can't.
No, yeah, I think we need greater clarity on this, right? Because it's like, if it's a phased approach and there's phased one in the lower 10 acres that's uses the CBGDR money, right? Then like, yes, like theoretically the 70% low to moderate income, but if you then went up the hill and did another development, like that would not be perpetually affordable necessarily. I also think it's really important, Kelly, that we understand what we're talking about when we say 70% low to moderate income. Like for Montpelier, what does that actually look like? What is the salary range of that?
Yeah.
Of that unit? I mean, the reality is we're going to want some kind of affordability component under any scenario.
Does it just match the HUD stuff? I mean, that's, you know, you've got.
Well, that's what I was thinking, is that what we put in here probably ought to match the HUD requirement. I think it's a little different now. Matt?
I don't have anything else to work on that's as pressing as this, so I will spend the rest of the day trying to come up with facts for us. Okay.
And if I could, I would just recommend a person that's really a valuable resource at ACCD on this is Ann Kroll, who runs the Vermont Community Development Program, and she's like really has an extensive experience with this program.
Okay, great.
From Irene. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Ben.
And you know, I do think in the messaging out to the public, whenever we talk about affordability and we use percentages like this, the average person has no idea what we're talking about.
Totally.
So we have to then bring it back into, you know,
in
Washington County, you know, one bedroom is, you know, 1,500 for, you know, at 70% or whatever like that, you know, per month. Just try to get back to that at some point. But for the purposes of the developers, they understand. It's understandable. So, okay, we'll get that language more channeled. The extension, so that's interesting. I had not heard that the 18th was possibly moved, so we'll find out about that, Adrian. And then, you know, the idea was we would have a short list by the time we applied and a process in place. And we had it in the, you know, that schedule that we put forward in the RFQ is what we would show in the application. Like, this is when we expect we will have a developer in place, and that just shows that there's and by the 18th we'll have people interested, and the hope is that we've had, you know, even if the short list is 5, let's hope we get 10. I hope so, but I don't know. But you know, if we had 10 qualified interested people, that's a great story to tell. So that's the point. Okay. So
we're halfway through our meeting.
Yeah, no, you know. That's good, because those were the really substantive and the global stuff, right? So wordsmithing, I said, send me your red lines and any kind of, typos or kind of corrections that would make things make more sense. But let's, and what I'll do is combine everybody's red lines. And if there's competing red lines, I'll call it out. But for the purposes of tomorrow, I'd send you by the end of today a complete red line so you can see what the changes would look like. And then if you have substantive questions or concerns, we can discuss them tomorrow. That can be like a strategy in terms of the minutia. But let's go back to kind of section by section, if that works for everybody.
Great.
So we start here with the intro. We've talked about the intro a little bit. I think, even the intro could get bolstered a little bit by the activity component and what's been happening up there. So let me take a stab at that and see how it feels and reads, unless somebody else is excited to write that. I'm open to that. No? Okay, just me. I'll do it. And I'll get back. I'll send that out again and send that to everybody and, kind of sell it more, right? Like the intro is our chance to show off this awesome asset.
It's a super exciting opportunity, right? It's
right.
fantastic.
And right now it sounds a little dry because most of them are dry, but you know what? We can do that differently. We don't have to, I haven't written most of them. Let me put it that way. I'm gonna throw my colleagues under the bus. Yeah. They usually do this. And this is exciting. Okay. And then project highlights. Is there any comments on this of substance that if you have would rather sequence them differently, I'm open to that. You can send that in a red line or now, it's up to you. Oh, this is the question. The city contribution, we had previously, I'm going to scroll down to this part here because we had previously said 3.8, nope, 4. I'm losing my numbers. What we had it previously in here was like 3 and 4, basically. It was
7.2.
7.2. But Mike Miller walked that back in his edit, Kelly. So I didn't want to go forward with those numbers, Matt.
The actual numbers are $3 million for the catalyst funding. I sent you an email last week if you didn't see it. And then $8 million in the DR funding. And the reason that changed was because Public Works asked that we include the reconstruction of a pump station that's nearby in the total grant.
Oh. How does this committee feel about that?
Well, the applications have been, the catalyst was submitted last Friday.
Right, catalyst, yeah. But I just didn't know if that 8 was up from 4 something, right?
So yeah, I mean, the pump station has been on the table for a while. I think in terms of narrative and what we've been talking with council about is the reconstruction of the road and the infrastructure. And so that ad, I think, we can certainly tie it out. And I do think that we probably should add that in a second round. I want to talk internally about how we do that. Okay. So anyway.
Is the pump station connected to the CCR infrastructure?
Yeah, so it's needed for sure.
Oh, it is, okay.
To make that whole area work, and it's been identified as a need. I think, in terms of the sequencing of elements for investments, we just need to figure that out. If, it's possible that we can get that amount of funding, and that's awesome. I just want to make sure that the way that we categorize that in the grant application is consistent with what we've been talking about.
Okay. Adrian.
So on the project highlights, I mean, I'm not a developer, so maybe they would understand this, but from a layperson perspective, the 133 acre parcel located, so 133 acres, and then we had 50 acres open and 83 acre woods. Like, does it make sense to say what is buildable? I mean, is the 50, you have open land, but does that mean that that's buildable land? So that's my first question. And then the 15,688 square foot commercial building, you put that as a project highlight, but maybe we do like a comma and say, I mean, it's occupied.
Currently occupied, right?
Yeah, like daycare / recreation or city owned or whatever we want to, because I don't want the developers thinking that commercial building is part of they can do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I would read it. But once again,
And, you know, that could be something we need to add in general about like, what do those leases look like? And I guess it's, you know, my question is, I mean, back in, so I'm playing catch up a little bit on this one, but originally we were saying, you know, the building is in fair play, like that could be redeveloped as part of this, as part of a housing build out. But is that that's no longer the case, that building is going to remain no matter what for now? I mean, for the foreseeable future?
I mean, we have a lease with Turtle Island.
Yeah.
So
How
I don't
long is
know.
Pretty
Yeah,
long
no,
term.
that'll remain for quite
Okay.
some time.
Okay,
And
okay.
probably at least for the next 20 years.
Oh,
So
okay.
we might include we might just take the 50 acres and the 133 acres and make it one highlight, you know, at southeastern part of the city, comma, including 54 buildable areas on 50 acres of open land, something like that. So that they get the picture, there's this giant site, but there are 4 buildable areas on 50 acres.
Okay, combine these.
Just an idea.
Yep, okay.
And then that puts those 2 acreage highlights together as well.
I'll work all this. These are notes to myself for the rewrite. Okay. Okay, moving down a little bit. I was a little not sure how we wanted to describe this for Act 250. Right now, all we can say is there is no existing land use permit, no current. I feel like saying no existing is better than current, but no existing land use permit. Act 250 or city will be pursuing tier 1 designation. Again, outside Vermont, nobody knows what that means. But they have to do their homework. They have to understand. I'm not going to dumb it down for them. I think if they have questions, that's a fair question to ask, and we'll put that out in our. So what happens is they ask questions. There's a due date. Then we put out a document that has everybody's questions, and that goes to all the people that had, not even just people who submitted questions, but everybody we sent a RFQ to, and we posted on the website. So that might be a question, but you know, that's all we can say. I don't think we can promise anything more than that.
I agree. The only question I would have is maybe, I'm not sure when the land use review map's coming out for central Vermont and whether or not that'll be identified. I mean, it's supposed to be identified as a planned growth area, I believe.
Right.
But, you know, I mean, I think it is true to say the city will be pursuing tier 1A, so maybe just leave it at that.
Come out in January, maybe.
So it also occurs to me that we mentioned that we're enrolled in Brella before we tell them that this was a former golf course. I mean, I don't know how their blood pressure will change if they know it's a golf course before we mention it's enrolled in Brella.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to put it on the same line because that's what matters. Like, that's how it's related.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And I should say city is enrolled in Brella. Well, yeah, city is enrolled in Brella, property is enrolled, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Right.
Now, the phase 1 is expired now. They're not in perpetuity. You have to refresh them before you're going to do any kind of closing or development, but you know, at least it gives them something. And I'm just tempted to maybe put a date in here.
Yeah, it's worth their knowing that was done.
Yeah, and they do have it will be, well, maybe I don't even need to add it. It's going to be an appendix. You know, we'll add it as a citation of where to find that. So okay. All right. Yep. All that seems all relevant, right? So then background, we talked a little bit about and thank you, Adrian, for a lot of this language in this first paragraph. That was valuable. So I don't know if we have any, again, wordsmithing can be sent to me, but if there's substantive positioning of these paragraphs.
Once again, I don't know when I read 133 acre parcel as a developer, I would think that that's what I have to play with.
Yep.
But that's, you know, I just want to make sure that we're not They don't have 133 acres to like build on.
Nope, got it. Let me tweak that. Okay. And so, you know, these are, the point of this is, I mean, there's one of the purposes of this, or one of the needs of this process is brevity here. So, you know, make it short and sweet, tell them what they need to know, tell them what they need to do, let them do their homework and ask questions, and then get us qualifications and an expression of interest that gives us something to respond to, but not, you know, doesn't have to be laborious. So that's why I did not add a preamble here to the partnership opportunity, because let's just get to the meat of the thing. You know, this is what we can offer.
Is the background section where we were talking about adding more about the current use of the site and so on? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I have here, the note about ad activity and.
One question, are we in the partnership opportunity section?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
One question I had was the tax stabilization. Does that really, I mean, how does that work with a TIF calculation?
I'm so glad you asked.
Yeah.
So this is interesting because you can combine them, and it's counterintuitive in a way. However, what the thinking is that if your infrastructure costs can be covered through grants and some tax increment, but you don't need all the tax increment that a project may generate, you can do a stabilization agreement and give them a different benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So in Rutland, for example, that's what happened. So the hotel, there's an $8.5 million infrastructure project, but they got catalysts, they got sales tax reallocation, they got, you know, all these sources, and they really only needed 3 point, whatever it ended up being, 3.2 in TIF money. And so they were able to stabilize. And so it's basically, you know, the name of the game. Think about Rutland if you can for a minute, and the fact that they had this hotel site burned to the ground in the 70s and nothing rebuilt with no downtown hotel. The name of the game is get them money. How can you get them money? Because they was not some big bad developer. It's a local construction company that bought the building, just bought the lot and decided to put some skin in the game to say, this is our community. So it's a local developer and, you know, somebody who wanted to do good for the city, but it just, you can't, obviously 50 years, nothing had happened. And
sure. Yeah, no, that's great. If it's another legitimate tool to use, and we're only saying it's potential. So yeah.
Exactly. And I'm saying that for the record, because I think public narrative is important, that like the point is to infuse money into a project, and it's not to line people's pockets, but rather to get the project you want. Sometimes the projects are too expensive. So let's help bring down those costs any way we can.
Well, and Stephanie, in that particular example, I'm not super familiar with it too, but incredible like brownfield issues because of the building that was there that burned. And so like the upfront cost to redevelop that site, it utterly impossible without some kind of subsidy.
Yeah, proven by 5 years of, you know, nothing happening there. So 50 years of nothing happening there. And yeah, it was 5 million of remediation.
Just one quick thing too, I'm thinking somewhere in here, I don't know if it's partnership opportunity in the background, but I do think it's important to reference the city plan and the idea that we, you know, adopted a city plan that calls for 75 housing units a year, right? So like 1,500 units over the next 20 years. I think that demonstrates like we are planning for this kind of growth.
Thank you. Yep. All right. Yep.
And I don't know if this is I don't know. I'm just thinking like on our agenda next week, we were talking about the appeals process. I feel like that is such a deterrent for developers in Montpelier. We could just put this as a side note. I mean, it's not going to change right now. It might not change next Wednesday, but if the city does address something with appeals in the future, even maybe I don't know what the timing will be. I don't know if it'll line up, but I just want to put that to the side in our brains that we are working on it and maybe something will change. I don't know.
Well, maybe it's something we can add in the RFP at that time, you know, in a month or 2 months when we're issuing the RFP, a month and a half, whatever it is, 2 months. And when we're issuing the RFP, even if it's just in progress, you could add the council minutes to the exhibits to just show what the city's position is at this time.
Mhm.
Okay. Requirements, we've talked about that, about the buildable areas and the LMI. We'll work on that. You know, I think,
That buildable area plan, by the way, still says master plan, and I have a vague memory that we changed that to actionable plan because it, we changed the name of the overall plan. I'm not sure. So I may have an early version of it, but Mike will have
yeah, we'll look at the most recent.
the most recent, yeah.
Okay. All right, for the sake of time, I'm going to move on. Request for qualifications. I actually added a note, but since the version you saw last night, because I remembered one thing we talked about, which was we want to make sure that they know it's not binding, whatever they say here. I might actually put that as a general remark somewhere. I mean, they should know, developers know what RFQs are, but even just for the public consumption of this, they need to understand that whatever someone proposes in a qualification expression of interest is non-binding, and it's non-binding to the city, whether or not, you know, when you solicit an RFP from them, you're not suggesting that their plan is the winner and that that's the only thing you're going to follow. I think more of those prefaces are not a bad idea. So I'm going to add that somewhere. So again, same kind of, we kind of went up through all this. This was all the stuff we added last. Oh, I did create some language here. I'm just drawing your attention to it. It was in your draft, but I just went with questions, the way that we framed the questions last time, as a way of just suggesting what they need to answer. Does that sound okay? Ben, you were the one to raise that.
Yeah,
so,
no, I
sorry.
think that's great. Yeah.
All right. And then just our selection criteria.
There's a couple of places where we mentioned rental, but we don't talk much about home ownership. Maybe we find a way to include both, just to make sure that we're not weighting it one way or the other.
Thank you. Yep. And then okay. And I think 2 of the 3 of you said this works for you. Does November 6th at 10 work for everybody? The one who didn't respond is checking his calendar, so it's okay. Calling you out.
I'm sure it's fine.
Okay.
Sure, it's fine. I'll make it work.
Well, if 2 of the 3 are available, it's not
Yeah,
also
right.
essential that everybody be there. I'm just suggesting. And I think it is, if you do have a quorum, Kelly, it'll be a warned thing, right? So you just have to be careful, be ready to do that. So we've got this, this list, and then the general information and supporting documents we'll work on, and the informational only. So that's it. We have 10 minutes left, so I just actually wanted to take a second to see if we could chat about the distribution list. And I don't know if I commented back to everybody. I think Sal and I went back and forth a little bit, but one of the things that's not on the list that I'm going to be adding, and I have to do some brainstorming, and maybe the staff can help me, but if you can help too, institutional partners. We can send this to institutional partners and employers without expecting that they're going to be the proposer, but the one that comes to mind is, of course, is the hospital, as a partner, potential partner that's interested in you know, investing at least into some housing development. They may have ideas too. So, and they may have ideas of other developers to forward it on to. So I'll add them to our list. And if you have any that come to mind in the next week, just send me your ideas.
So I was emailed, sorry, I'm very behind on getting to you. I apologize, but I was emailed a company called Village Ventures. We can add that to the list.
Okay.
Do you know who they are? I don't know who they are, but they're in Vermont. It's a Vermont-based company.
Okay.
Their website is called villageventuresdev.com.
Okay.
But
right.
add that to the list because they do this.
Yeah.
Do.
Yep. Great. Yeah. Let's, more is good. In this scenario, there's no downside.
Here,
So.
I'll put that in the chat just so you have it.
I wrote it down. You're good.
Okay.
Thank you. Yep. Perfect. So, yeah. So, you know, this doesn't have to be ended today. I said final on our original timeline. I had finalized the list today, but it's not required that it be. We're not sending this out for a couple weeks. So, well, is that true? The 23rd. So, we have a week in a day. So if you have other ideas between now and then, that's great. And the only other thing on my list was to talk about the matrix for evaluation. And I think we can roughly base it on the selection criteria. To be fair, you don't need a matrix depending on what kind of qualifications you get. It's helpful to have some like rough grading structure. If you did get a 10 and you need to whittle it to 5, we will be lucky to get 5. So I don't think we should overly burden ourselves with this. We also could, the time to make more, a more substantive matrix is evaluating the proposals, which we will do, to create an actual matrix for the actual proposals.
So just to clarify the process, the subcommittee is going to evaluate the responses and decide who gets an RFP, or is it a larger group?
I defer to you. That's not my area.
And then when we get the RFPs, I assume, I mean, our work is done once the RFP is sent, as I see it. Maybe not, but it seems to me when we are evaluating the RFP, it's a larger group, or it's another.
I think we need clarity on that, right? I agree, Sal, in terms of like my understanding of the charge of this subcommittee right now is to develop the RFP.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think I think that feels like a conversation for council on how do we want to do the evaluation process.
I think it is. And I also, I mean, it's going to be on the agenda on the 22nd. And so that's something that, you could decide, on sort of this RFQ to go out on the 23rd, but then you could also say what the next steps are and how you're going to do that.
And if your charge was to develop the RFP is not going to be done until,
yes.
What do we say? December 11th is when we're sending out the RFP.
Yeah.
So my thought was in the next few weeks, we need to meet again to develop the RFP itself, which is going to be an expansion of this work. And so we need to sharpen the pencil on that and get that process started and create a meeting schedule. It's been just a blitz to get to RFQ to city council, but let's maybe tomorrow. Why don't I look at my calendar? Kelly,
that's what I was thinking. Maybe tomorrow we try to
set the dates.
Nail that down. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll look at that. We'll set dates for RFP development. And then, I would think that this committee is able, has the power, but I don't know that, to take the calls and make the list of 5, recommend the short list of 5 to the full council. The full council needs to vote on who
Sure.
invite, but I would think that they would base it on your recommendation since that was the charge. And then full council process of deciding who is the chosen developer. That is another question. I can come back to you tomorrow with examples of what other communities have done, who made that decision and did it, in what stage. Was it a small committee up to the bigger group or blah, blah, blah. So let me look at it.
That would be great.
All right.
I think that would be great.
Okay.
And I think, I think that research just kind of layering in when is the opportune time to bring in like community involvement into that process.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like what makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and truthfully, we may not have an example to replicate because nothing's been done of this scale, statewide, and with communities that have, like, some of them are just so obvious that like they don't need a lot of public process. It's like, oh, well, yeah, that obviously needs to be, and it's limited. There's only so much square footage you can do something with. The other thing is you have to be mindful that we may get 1 or 3, but only 2, and 2 of them aren't qualified. That's a reality. So, when we get to that point, it's good to have the process in place. We need to have the process in place and make sure it's very clear, and then we'll just roll with it. But okay. Well, I have homework, so you'll get the revised draft when you get it. I'm not guaranteeing it won't be at midnight, so I'm just gonna let you know. I hope I can get to it this afternoon, but if not, I have to do it post kid.
No, great. Thanks, Stephanie. And Matt, I appreciate your efforts today to clarify that question.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.